Hey everyone, it's Richard Metalfan here, bringing you guys an old school album review. And today we're going to be looking into this album's 15th anniversary, and it's from one of, I guess a lot of people consider this a guilty pleasure, and I know a lot of people will probably give me shit for this, but I really don't give a fuck. I like this album, and as you see below the title, today we're going to be talking about Phobia by Breaking Benjamin. This was the band's third album, released on August 8th, 2006 through Hollywood Records. Now, this of course follows up their previous album, We Are Not Your Alone, which came out in 2004, which I thought was a pretty good album. And that was around that time when they had the song Sold Cold, and that pretty much what got Breaking Benjamin sort of like really known in like the mainstream and radio and stuff. And I feel like with Phobia, their third album, I think this is pretty much like Breaking Benjamin's opus. A lot of people would consider this to be their best album, and I do agree. I think it's still a great album because 2006, I thought for like that rock scene was actually pretty good. With this out with a Phobia and 1X by 3 Days Grace, I feel like 2006 that whole those bands like Breaking Benjamin, Chevelle, 3 Days Grace really kind of like targeted that demographic of like 12, 13 year olds, which I was in that age at that time. Yeah, it just really has like a lot of feelings of like angst, like feeling alone and just hard shit. I'll just dive right into this. Production is great. Breaking Benjamin and Can Do No Wrong, and a lot of people consider Breaking most all of their stuff. If they have like a formula that they stick with, but I honestly think they do it pretty well. Well, I mean, there's some songs that sound similar, but there's also some songs that kind of experiment a little bit, but still has that Breaking Benjamin feel. Like when you first hear it, you're like, oh, that's a Breaking Benjamin song. Like I said, and if it's not broke, don't fix it. Am I right? Let's just dive right into it. Like the vocals from Ben Burnley are great. Like he puts a lot of like feel into his singing. Like, well, of course, with like later albums, he definitely pushes himself. But I think with here, he just really does well. And his riffing, along with like former guitarist Aaron Fink's leads, are pretty solid. The bass is pretty audible from Mark James Klepaski. You could definitely hear it well. And drumming wise, Chad Stilega, I probably butchered his last name. I think he's a really great drummer. So yeah, I pretty much rambled on for almost 3 minutes. So without further ado, let's dive into this album track by track. Now, starting things off is simply called Intro, which is talking about which has just a clip of a flight attendant explaining safety procedures for flying airplane sounds with some random guitars playing in the background. And given like the title Phobia, this pretty much represents Ben's like fear of flying, and I think this is pretty interesting way, and it's a good job to like introduce the album really well. And then we get to the next song, which is called The Diary of Jane. Now this is the first like main song on the album, and this is actually the band's most famous song, and this is pretty much the song that pretty much got me into the band when I was in middle school, like around 7th grade. And this song lyrically talks about a guy who loves a girl and doesn't really like him that much, and he thinks of some twisted thoughts, and it's a really great song just from that clean guitar, and it just goes all right in, and just that chorus is like, something's getting in the way, something's just about to break. Just a really great chorus. Once you hear it, it's just stuck in your head, and I think it's a great song. Pretty much, in my opinion, the Breaking Benjamin song. And then we move on to Breath, and this is another one of the singles from this album. And lyrically, I feel like it talks about like the fear in general, sort of like keeping in tune with the concept of the album. And it has some really great instrumentation and some pretty good vocal performances from Ben. And I feel like this album does start out low, but it just really gets great. Especially it starts off very clean, and it has some moments where it almost kind of sounds a little bit ballady, but it also has some heaviness and also a lot of melodicness with this song. Then we move on to the next song on the album, which is called Low. Now this is pretty much where things get a little bit slower and more emotional in this song, which lyrically it talks about like the fear of your lover walking out on you and subsequently dying. And the instrumentation is pretty much the standard for Breaking Benjamin, but Ben's vocal delivery is really well done here, which has sounds very subtle, which matches like the song's serious tone. And the lyrics are pretty much simplistic, but they really add to the song, and it's almost kind of similar to Breath a little bit, but it has a kind of like a ballad type, which is simple, but it's a greatly executed. Next up is Evil Angel. Now this song kind of sounds a little bit dark. It talks about like the fear of an evil angel or death, and the guitar sound on here is really great, and Ben's vocals are really just top notch. And this has some of the best lyrics as well, and it's a really great song. Then we move on to Until the End. Now I feel like the subject matter feels a little bit abstract here, and I kind of like feel like the song is kind of leaves open to interpretation. And it has some really great instrumentation, and this is actually one of the few songs where you hear profanity in the song. Like there's a line in there with that saying "without you fucking up," which of course you could tell there's a parental advisory logo. Oh, and it's a pretty good song. Moving on to Dance with the Devil, and the instrumentation here kind of sounds like a little bit less predictable here, and Ben delivers one of the best vocal performances on here, and it's one of the band's best written songs. It really showcases like the major talent from every member. And it also very much a slower song where it has some like slower moments, and then it goes very mid-pace, especially in like the choruses. It's like it just when I hear that song, it just gives me chills. Overall, Dance with the Devil, pretty good song. Moving on to Topless. Now Topless, I feel like lyrically could be talk about like the fear of sexual repression, but I just don't hear any like fear coming to the song. But it has some really great instrumentation, and Ben uses some really great vocal style here. And there's like some pretty interesting lyrics, like saying "fuck you, fuck me" at the end. And I don't know. It's like the only reason, like I mentioned, like this song has a parental advisory label, but which I don't know, but whatever. Overall, good song. Next up is Here We Are. Now, Here We Are is what I would consider, in my opinion, the only true ballad of the album. And I feel like lyrically this song talks about like the fear of rejection. The instrumentation on here is a lot softer, and Ben's vocals have somewhat more of a haunting feel to it. And in my opinion, is one of the most underrated Breaking Benjamin songs. And it's a really good song. Unknown Soldier comes up next, and this is, in my opinion, probably the most intense song on the album. And this song is pretty much about like a soldier in war who wants to end the fighting, and it pretty much paints a good picture of the soldier situation, and the fear of death does play a little bit of the part in the song, and it fits so well with the album. And the emotion coming out of like the execution and is pretty much great. Next up is Had Enough. Now, Had Enough, I feel like, is a very angry song, and you could talk about like being afraid of your lover, and it's like has, in my opinion, the second heaviest instrumentation. And it still has like the standard delivery, but has like that heavy instrumentation with sort of like an anger a little bit with from Ben, and it's a very alluring song. You Fight Me. Now, You Fight Me is a really interesting song. Now, the vocals here go in like different directions, making this kind of a little bit awkward, but the instrumentation does its same thing. And I lyrically, it's another song that talks about fear of rejection, which is kind of weird, especially now with Ben, like he's married and has a kid. And I don't know, it's just really interesting. Then we get to the last song on the album, which is called Outro. Now the outro is used like as a sort of like a little vocal sample with sort of like the flight attendant from the intro, and it adds sort of like random screaming people and playing the plane has crashed or something, and it puts like into like a chaotic sounding instrumentation, and it's a fitting end to this album. Now overall, Phobia by Breaking Benjamin, it's just a classic album, and it's just one of those bands for me. It's a nostalgic for especially like the early years of like middle school and stuff that just still stuck with me. So if I were to give this album a score, I'm gonna give Phobia by Breaking Benjamin a solid 10 out of 10. So yeah, that's my review of the album, guys. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about the album, and I'll see you all in the next video, and as always, keep it metal.